got the finished sanding and everything ready. So now we're going to give it one more last rinse and get all that stuff off and let the parts dry and get back to priming. And one other thing I did before I washed everything was just went back to the dashboard here and drilled out where the gauges will go. And I've also tried to do something, I don't know if you can see this, the light's horrible. I'm going to try hinging the glove box on that. So we'll get these parts all dried, let everything dry real good, and get back here and start priming. Alright, okay, now that we have everything sanded and we're ready to shoot some primer, the other thing I do is I get all my pieces set up so that when I individually prime them, they have a stand, and there's different ways to hold different parts. One way is very simply this blue tacky stuff. You buy it at Fred Meyer, Walmart, different places, and basically that's just going to tack onto the back of your piece and onto a popsicle stick. So if you want to hold it and shoot it, you've got that. I use that and clothespins to hold my pieces to where I can stand them up and let them sit. I also use these little brass clips. They hold on nicely. And then on that I have a stand that is used to hold these pieces, and we just slide those in there so you can see that I just have a 2x4 here, and that is used to hold the pieces that I've clipped, the hood or whatever, and you can pull them out and put them in your spray booth, however you want to do that. And then the standard toothpick in the engine in the tranny with the engine block to get that primed. Door panels, door parts are held with the sticky stuff. I use the wire on the trunk, and I just use that and a spare piece of wire. But I get everything laid out. Also with the body, with the hinges, I like to do this. I like to cover the outside of the hinge here with some tape, and I like to cover the trunk hinge with a little tape. That way you're not scraping primer and paint off of these things trying to get your doors and your trunk back on. So we'll just hide them in there and prime it, get everything good. But I have everything ready to go. I have all my sanding done and my prep work, and now we'll shoot some primer on these things and see if there's any additional prep work that needs to be done. Sometimes you find out that your prep work just the primer will accentuate any flaws you might have. So this hopefully will turn out well, and we'll get to priming these parts. Okay, here we are at the spray booth, and so you can see I have my everything ready to go. And so now I'm gonna do a tree. I'm just priming the parts on the tree. I'm using a rattle can of just a regular plastic primer. So we're just gonna lightly, forgot to turn the spray booth on. So just lightly, so you don't miss any or hide any details by over painting. Make sure you wear your glove, always handy to have. Primer is very important, especially if you plan on using acrylics, craft acrylics or other acrylics. Don't stick particularly well to unprimed styrene. Well, you just kind of go around lightly, making sure you have everything primed. And in my spray booth, I have little hooks. I'll see if I can have little hooks so I can hang the screws up to dry. So inside here, I don't know if you can see that very well, but I could just hang the sprue right up in there. Another hook over there, so I can do all my sprues and then do the other pieces down on the Lazy Susan in there. So just grab another sprue. I usually wear a mask also. You can use any primer if you like to use the Tamiya primers or whatever works for you on the styrene. And then we just reach through here and hang that one up. Grab the last sprue here. If I can grab it. Hang this one up over here. Let that dry real well. Then we can start on the smaller parts. Okay, and I like to use the spray booth as a kind of because the smaller parts take so much less primer that I just set them on the Lazy Susan. You can spin them around here. We can get all of these body parts and whatever else. So you can set these out of the way. sure you get all the edges, everything. And I like to just set them down in there. Working on the door panels now. The spray booth has made this so much nicer since I built this. Makes everything just head right out the window, and I use it as a drying booth also. So after I get everything shot with a good coat of primer, I just let everything sit in there. And then after it's done, we pull it out and we get to work on wet sanding and painting and assembly. Okay, now that we have primed everything, literally everything, got the body, I've started wet sanding with 3600 and 4000 grit, and we just have to get this all sanded up and get ready for a body color and get ready for an interior color. One thing that I forgot to mention was when you're priming, you want to make sure that you pick the right color primer. If you go with a gray, a dark gray primer, that will give you a darker finish with light colors, whereas if you picked a white primer, that will give you a slightly lighter finish, especially in your top coat on the body. Your smaller parts doesn't make that much difference, but your body, let's say you were going to go with a light yellow or something, you were going to go with a lighter color, you would want to use a white primer rather than this dark gray primer. Haven't really picked out this color, but I'm assuming it'll be a darker, maybe a turquoise, maybe a blue. I'll find out in the next day or two what it's going to be. But now I can start doing the fine detailing on the parts. You can see things are starting to really shape up here. Not bad detail on this. Looking for those seams. You can see the seats turned out pretty well. There's still a hint of a seam, but again, I can live with it if there's a little bit of a seam there, or after I sand it, things will start to look good. I haven't decided on what I'll do with the chassis here. Sometimes on these cars that I do stock, I leave the chassis in a gray primer and shoot dull coat over it to protect it. We'll see. I don't know yet. Still gotta play around with this, check that out. But I take my 3600 and very lightly wet sand the whole body. And I want to be sure, I want to be really sure that I get any place that I am going to put bare metal foil on. I really want that to be smooth. So these edges, I want to make sure Those are really smooth. So I'm going to do a really good job of this to make sure that first coat goes down fairly smooth. Because that's when you've got a nice paint job but your bare metal foil is rough. It's just a waste of time to not make sure that those things are sanded down real good. So you're going to take your 36 or 4000 grit and really get this body sanded. Don't push hard. I use just a little water and I just really buff this out. And then we'll give this a nice another bath, get any of the dust off, and then hit it with a cheesecloth or a tack cloth to make sure everything's off before we put a final coat on it. Again, I'll keep these taped off until I get the body color shot on it. But I got everything. Might need to hit a few things again. Notice I have some light spots on some pieces, and so I need to make sure I get those good and primed. See, I got a few light spots here. Sometimes on your smaller parts you don't necessarily worry about the light spots, especially if you're using the testers, the oil base, it sticks pretty well. But if you're using the craft enamels, you want to make sure that those things are primed really well, just because they don't stick. So I'll get to sanding and then we'll get back to painting.